All right, buckle up everyone, because today we're diving headfirst into some serious market mayhem. We've got the EQAI Morning Briefing, hot off the press, for November 5th, 2024. And let me tell you, it is a wild ride out there.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Exactly. We've got the usual suspects, the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones, doing their little dip, but get this.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
The Russell 2000, which, as you know, tracks those smaller companies, decided to go up. What's the deal with that? It's like they've got a different playbook or something.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head-scratcher, isn't it? It really makes you wonder if those smaller companies are seeing something that maybe the big guys are missing.
Right, like some secret insider info or something. But wait, there's more? Bitcoin, good old Bitcoin, decided to throw a party and jumped over 1.3%. Is crypto the new safe haven? What do you think?
Well, it certainly seems like some investors might be looking for a bit of shelter from the storm, with all the choppy waters in the traditional markets. But Bitcoin's always been a bit of a wild card, hasn't it?
That's one way to put it. So, is this a fling or a long-term relationship? Who knows? But let's move on to something a little closer to home, shall we? The Federal Reserve. The EQAI briefing is saying there's a good chance we might see some rate cuts in December.
Interesting. And right before the U.S. presidential election, too.
Now, that can't be a coincidence, can it?
Well, there's always been a bit of a, shall we say, connection between elections and what happens with interest rates. It's a bit of a dance, really.
Okay, I like where this is going. Break it down for us. Is it more of a waltz or like an awkward middle school slow dance?
Maybe a bit of both. But think about it this way. A strong economy, well, it usually helps whoever's already in charge, right? So anything that could give the economy a little boost, like, I don't know, maybe lower interest rates.
I see. A little you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours situation. But is that really a win-win for everyone? Does everyone walk away happy?
Well, not so fast. Lower rates might encourage people to borrow and spend more, which sounds good on the surface, but...
There's always a but.
Right. It can also lead to inflation, which ends up hitting everyone's wallets pretty hard.
So, like a sugar high followed by a massive crash. Not fun.
Exactly. The Fed has a tough job, trying to balance stimulating the economy while keeping inflation under control.
It's a tightrope walk for sure. So what you're saying is, if the Fed cuts rates, maybe we should stock up on ramen just in case.
Could be a good idea.
All right, noted. Okay, moving on from the Fed's balancing act, let's talk about a company that's been making some headlines, Prime Drink Group Corp. They're back on the Canadian Securities Exchange after, well, a bit of a timeout.
Timeout. That's putting it mildly. Usually these suspensions happen because of some pretty serious stuff. Regulatory issues, maybe some compliance problems, sometimes even investigations.
So they need to show everyone that they've learned their lesson and can play by the rules.
You got it. Whether Prime can actually make a comeback, well, that all depends on if they address whatever got them suspended in the first place.
Makes sense. All right, now let's talk about a company that's all about luxury, Ferrari. Their deliveries to China took a bit of a nosedive, but they're still saying they're optimistic about the rest of the year. Now, isn't China like the biggest market for these luxury brands?
Oh, absolutely. China's massive for luxury. So for Ferrari to stick to their guns like this is pretty interesting. They must have something up their sleeve.
Right, maybe they have some new models or some secret strategy
Or maybe they're just hoping that other markets will make up for the losses in China. Time will tell.
A bit of a gamble, if you ask me.
Uh,
Okay, speaking of big moves, let's shift gears to the tech sector. EQAI is painting a picture of resilience, but there's this undercurrent of worry about data privacy and all the regulations popping up.
Yeah, this is something that affects everyone, not just those big tech companies.
It's not just some sci-fi movie plot anymore, is it? This stuff is real.
It's real, and it's
Yeah.
getting more important every day. Data is like the new gold, and how it's collected, used, and protected. Well, that have huge consequences for all of us.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy when you think about it. It's like everyone's got this digital shadow that knows way more about them than they realize.
Exactly. And the EQAI briefing even highlighted some pretty big moves from Apple and Microsoft. They're investing a ton in AI and renewable energy.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more. How could these innovations actually change things for everyday people? Is this going to be awesome or scary or both?
It's definitely both. There's so much potential, especially in healthcare. Imagine AI helping doctors diagnose diseases earlier than ever before.
Wow, that would be incredible.
And it's not just healthcare. Think about education. AI could personalize learning in a way we've never seen before. Then there's climate change. AI could play a huge role in optimizing energy consumption.
Okay, that's the good stuff, but what about the downsides? What about all the talk about robots taking over and AI stealing our jobs?
It's not quite that dramatic, but there will be shifts in the job market for sure. Some jobs will be automated, that's inevitable, but new ones will emerge too.
So it's more about adaptation than like fighting robots in the streets.
Exactly. The key is going to be focusing on skills that AI can't replicate. Things like creativity, problem solving, those uniquely human abilities.
So learn to dance with the robots, not against them. I like it. But what about this data privacy issue? How does that fit in with all this tech stuff?
It's a crucial part of the equation. As we become more and more reliant on these technologies, the data they collect becomes even more valuable and even more sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about health records, financial information, our entire online history. It's kind of scary.
And that's why regulation is so important. Governments all over the world are trying to figure out how to balance innovation with protecting people's data. It's a tough job, but it's essential.
It's a bit of a tightrope walk, isn't it?
It is, and it's something investors need to pay attention to, especially in the tech sector.
Right, because nobody wants to invest in a company that's about to get slapped with a massive fine for playing fast and loose with people's data.
Exactly. It's a whole new layer of risk to consider.
All right, noted. So we've talked about tech and AI, but the EQAI briefing also pointed to some major changes happening in the energy sector. It's like there's a tug-of-war going on with those traditional oil and gas companies on one side and renewable energy on the other.
It's the energy transition, and it's a huge deal.
It's not just about stocks and investments, right?
Yeah.
It's about the future of the planet.
Exactly. There's a global shift happening towards cleaner, more sustainable energy sources, and it's driven by both environmental concerns and just incredible advancements in technology.
So are we headed for a smooth transition, or are we going to hit some bumps along the way? What does this mean for investors who are trying to figure out where to put their money?
I think it's safe to say there will be both smooth sailing and some rough waters. The companies that cling to the old ways of doing things, well, they face some serious risks.
Makes sense.
But the companies that are leading the charge in renewable energy, those are the ones with potential for explosive growth.
So big opportunities, but also some risks. It's like navigating a minefield, but with a huge reward waiting at the end.
That's a good analogy. As always, diversification is key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right. Spread the risk.
Think about investing in companies that are making the shift to sustainable practices, those developing cutting-edge renewable technologies, and those focused on making everything more energy efficient.
Okay, got it. Now, EQAI also emphasized how interconnected everything is. They talked about how the Fed's decisions can affect global interest rates, how Ferrari's struggles in China could impact international trade. It all sounds very abstract. Can you give us an example of how this actually plays out in the real world?
Sure. Let's imagine the Fed raises interest rates to try and control inflation here in the U.S. That can lead to a stronger dollar, which makes U.S. goods more expensive for buyers in other countries.
Okay, so if the dollar is stronger, our stuff costs more overseas. Got it. But how does that affect things back home?
Well, it could make it harder for U.S. companies to sell their products abroad, which can hurt their profits. Those companies might have to scale back production or even lay off workers.
Ouch.
And that can have a domino effect on the whole economy.
So something that starts as a purely American decision can actually circle back and affect jobs and the economy here.
It's all connected. And it's not just about trade. A stronger dollar also makes it more expensive for Americans to travel abroad or buy imported goods.
So that European vacation might suddenly be out of reach.
Exactly. It's all a delicate balance.
It's like a giant game of economic Jenga. You pull out one piece, and you never know what might happen. Speaking of predictions, EQI mentioned that analysts are expecting more volatility in the markets, but also potential for growth in sectors like tech and healthcare. What's your take on that?
Well, volatility is definitely the name of the game these days. The world is changing so fast, there are always unexpected events popping up. But that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities.
Right. With risk comes reward.
Tech and healthcare, those are two sectors with massive potential for innovation and growth. So even with all the ups and downs, there are definitely bright spots to watch.
So don't panic, stay informed, and keep an eye out for those opportunities. Solid advice. But EQAI also mentioned something a little unsettling: geopolitical tensions affecting market volatility. Can you tell us more about that? What are some of the global hotspots we should be watching?
Geopolitical tensions are always a bit of a wild card. Uncertainty makes investors nervous, and that often leads to volatility.
It's like that saying, when cannons roar, markets tremble. So where are those cannons potentially firing right now?
Well, there are a few flashpoints to keep an eye on. The conflict in Ukraine is a major factor, as are the tensions in the South China Sea and the Middle East. Any escalation in those areas could have a serious impact on the global economy.
So it's not just about following the financial news. It's about understanding what's happening in the world. It's all connected.
Absolutely. What happens on one side of the planet can ripple out and affect us all.
It's a lot to take in. But hopefully this deep dive has given everyone some valuable insights and some things to think about. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And remember, the more we know, the better prepared we are to navigate all the twists and turns.
Couldn't agree more. So to wrap things up, what's the one key takeaway you want to leave our listeners with today?
Stay curious, stay informed, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The markets are always changing, so there's always something new to learn.
Perfect advice. And on that note, we'll see you all on our next deep dive into the fascinating world of markets and finance.
Yeah, geopolitical tensions, they always throw a wrench into things, you know? When things are uncertain, investors get nervous, and that usually leads to volatility.
It's like that old saying, what is it? When cannons roar, markets tremble. Something like that. But where are those cannons, so to speak? Where are the hot spots we should be keeping an eye on?
Well, the conflict in Ukraine is obviously a big one. That's not going away anytime soon. And then you've got the tensions in the South China Sea, and of course, the Middle East is always, well, the Middle East.
Always a bit of a powder keg, right?
Yeah.
So basically, we need to be paying attention to what's happening all over the world, not just here at home. It's all connected.
That's exactly it. What happens in one corner of the world can have a huge impact on the other side. We're all in this together, whether we like it or not.
It's a lot to keep track of, that's for sure. But hopefully, this deep dive has given everyone some food for thought. I know I've learned a lot.
Me too. And remember, the more you know, the better decisions you can make, whether it's about your investments or just understanding the world around you.
Knowledge is power, right? So to wrap things up, what's the one big takeaway you'd like to leave everyone with today?
Stay curious, stay informed, and never be afraid to ask questions. The world's constantly changing. There's always something new to learn.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the crazy world of markets and finance. We'll catch you next time.